Welcome to this edition of News Today, a series where we briefly discuss and analyze important news of the day. Without delay, let's explore the headlines first. Supreme Court to hear the dispute over the expansion of the Border Security Force jurisdiction in Punjab. The Central Board of Direct Taxes data. The direct tax to GDP ratio in India rose to a 15-year high in fiscal year 2023. RBI released a report titled Finances of Panchayati Raj Institutions. The Cabinet has approved the viability gap funding of Rs 8,500 crore for the promotion of coal and lignite gasification projects. As per Union Minister of Steel, the government is aiming to increase share of scrap in steel making process to 50% by 2047. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has announced a new treatment regimen for leprosy. Starting with the first news, Supreme Court to hear the dispute over the expansion of the Border Security Force jurisdiction in Punjab. In October 2021, the Ministry of Home Affairs extended BSF's jurisdiction in Punjab, West Bengal and Assam from 15 km to 50 km while reducing it in Gujarat from 80 km to 50 km. The 50 km limit was already in place in Rajasthan. In this area, BSF personnel can enforce some provisions of Criminal Procedure Code 1973, Passport Entry into India Act 1920 and Passport Act 1967. For other central legislations, the 15 km limit remains. Before proceeding, let's also talk about BSF and its jurisdiction. BSF or Border Security Force, also known as the First Line of Defense, is one of the 7 central armed police forces. It is mandated to guard the Indo-Pakistan and Indo-Bangladesh border. It has distinctly defined wartime and peacetime roles. Under Section 139 Clause 1 of the BSF Act 1968, Centre is empowered to publish orders regarding its jurisdiction in areas adjoining the borders of India. Coming back, the expansion of BSF's jurisdiction was justified by several reasons, including addressing issues of cross-border infiltration of drones with long-range capabilities, combating trans-border crimes like arms smuggling, counterfeit currency, and cattle smuggling more efficiently, and ensuring uniformity in BSF operations across states. However, the move faced a legal challenge from the Punjab government, which cited concerns related to federalism. The legislative powers on public order and police are in the state list of the 7th schedule of the Constitution. The Punjab government claimed that the state was not consulted before issuing such notification, contradicting federal spirit. In Punjab, numerous cities and towns fall within 50 km jurisdiction, unlike sparsely populated areas in Gujarat and Rajasthan. The Punjab government has challenged the notification under Article 131 of the Constitution. The Supreme Court, along with other issues, will also decide if such notification can be challenged under Article 131 or not.
Coming to the next news. As per the Central Board of Direct Taxes data, the direct tax to GDP ratio in India rose to a 15-year high in fiscal year 2023. Let us go through some related key highlights. The direct tax to GDP ratio reached a 15-year high at 6.11% of GDP in fiscal year 2023. The direct tax to GDP ratio gives an estimate of a country's ability to mobilize resources to fuel its development. Tax buoyancy, however, declined from 2.52 to 1.18 compared to the previous year. The tax buoyancy indicates the measure of efficiency or responsiveness in tax collection in response to the growth in GDP. Tax revenues are considered as buoyant when they increase more than proportionately in response to the increase in GDP, even when the rates of taxes remain unchanged. The recent decline indicates that the current economic growth did not lead to as much of an increase in direct tax collections for fiscal year 2023 as seen in 2022. Gross direct tax collections increased by over 173%, rupees 19.72 trillion in fiscal year 2023 from rupees 7.22 trillion in fiscal year 2014. Now, what are the various initiatives that prompted a rise in the direct tax to GDP ratio? Well, the first is a reduction in the corporate tax rate since the Finance Act of 2016, which has ensured better tax collections. Secondly, phasing out of exemptions and incentives for the corporate sector. Next, Vivad Se Vishwas scheme for reducing litigations in the direct tax payments. The Finance Act of 2020 also allows individual taxpayers to pay income tax at lower slab rates by foregoing specified exemptions. A few other reforms include Aadhaar PAN linkage, digital technology like faceless assessment or faceless appeal to improve tax administration and taxpayers' charter. What are direct taxes? In India, the primary direct taxes at the central level are personal and corporate income taxes governed by the Income Tax Act of 1961. India's tax to GDP ratio is comparatively low, ranking much lower than other countries. For instance, OECD countries typically have an average tax to GDP ratio exceeding 30%. The dominance of the informal sector, tax evasion, exemptions and incentives, etc. are key reasons for low ratio in India.
In our next news, RBI released a report titled Finances of Panchayati Raj Institutions. Drawing upon data on 2.58 lakh panchayats for the years 2020-21 to 2022-23, the report presents an assessment of Panchayati Raj institutions' finances. Let's start by discussing about Panchayati Raj institutions. 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992 institutionalized Panchayati Raj institutions. It has three-tier structure which include Gram Panchayat at village level, Panchayat Samiti at intermediate or block level, and Zilla Parishad at district level. It functions on 29 subjects outlined in the 11th schedule of the Constitution. Now let's dive into the key observations of the report. Panchayat's own sources of revenue are limited, mainly confined to property taxes, fees, and fines. Around 95% of their revenues take the form of grants from higher levels of government. There is a sharp interstate variation in devolution of powers and functions to panchayats. States having higher devolution levels exhibiting better socio-economic outcomes in health and education. Also, assessing fiscal health of Panchayati Raj institutions is difficult due to inconsistent data on their finances. Further, if we talk about the challenges in local tax revenue generation for Panchayati Raj institutions, then these include limited tax base, administrative infrastructure shortage, lack of trained staff, and unclear guidelines. Local governments derive their revenue from various sources, including contributions from the central government in the form of Central Finance Commission grants and other grants related to specific schemes. The state government plays a pivotal role by collecting tolls, taxes, duties, and fees on behalf of local bodies through the State Finance Commission's transfer. Additionally, local bodies have the authority to generate revenue through their own sources, as empowered by Article 243H, enabling Panchayati Raj institutions to impose, collect, and allocate taxes, duties, tolls, and fees.
Coming to the next news. The Cabinet has approved the viability gap funding of Rs 8,500 crore for the promotion of coal and lignite gasification projects. Let's go through the key highlights. Incentive for coal gasification projects is provided to government PSUs and private sector under three categories. Category 1. For government PSUs, up to 3 projects will be supported. Category 2. For private sector and government PSUs. Category 3. For demonstration projects using indigenous technology and small-scale product-based gasification plants. Selection of entities under Category 2 and 3 shall be carried out through a competitive bidding process. Grant will be paid to the selected entity in 2 equal installments. The empowered group of secretaries or EGOS chaired by the Secretary Coal is fully empowered to modify the scheme's modalities except total outlay. Now what is coal gasification? The underground coal gasification is a process by which coal is converted to useful gases without the need for mining. Gases can be subsequently used to produce heat, generate power, or synthesize a variety of chemical products. It helps in harnessing the coal reserves that are deep, scattered, and covered by forests. India has a target to gasify 100 million tons of coal by 2030. Let's go through some related news. The Cabinet has approved 2 joint venture projects for coal gasification. The first one is the joint venture of Coal India and GAIL for coal to SNG or synthetic natural gas project in Burdwan, West Bengal. SNG is equivalent to natural gas, which is mostly methane. It can be produced from coal, biomass, petroleum coke, and solid waste. The second one is the joint venture of Coal India and BHEL or BHEL for the coal to ammonium nitrate project in Jharsuguda in Odisha.
Moving on to the next news. As per Union Minister of Steel, the government is aiming to increase share of scrap in the steel making process to 50% by 2047. Let's start by first understanding the use of steel scrap in steel making. Steel is a material most conducive for circular economy as it can be used, reused and recycled infinitely. While iron ore remains the primary source of steel making, used or reused steel in the form of scrap is secondary raw material for the steel industry. Now let's also discuss the benefits of steel scrap. It helps in resource conservation as use of every ton of steel scrap shall save 1.1 ton of iron ore, 630 kg of coking coal and 55 kg of limestone. Use of scrap cuts emission by 25% in comparison to the primary route of steel making, reducing carbon footprints. India's steel sector accounts for 12% of India's CO2 emissions. Production of steel from recycled steel requires less energy, thus contributing to energy savings. However, there are also challenges in the reuse of steel scrap. India heavily relies on imported high-grade steel scrap to meet the demand. Logistical hurdles, including difficulties in moving and storing large quantities efficiently, pose significant obstacles. Also, there are concerns about the ecological footprint of recycling, especially the energy-intensive processing, are also being addressed. Ensuring the quality of scrap remains a challenge due to the deterioration over time or contamination. Despite these challenges, several recent steps have been taken to promote the use of steel scrap in India. The National Steel Policy of 2017 aims to achieve 300 million tons of steel making capacity by 2030, with a significant contribution of 35 to 40% from the electric arc furnace route. This method produces steel mostly from scrap collected for recycling. The Steel Scrap Recycling Policy of 2019 enhances the availability of domestically generated scrap, aiming to reduce the consumption of coal in steel making.
Recently, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has announced a new treatment regimen for leprosy. Leprosy is also called Hansen's disease. It is a chronic infectious disease which is caused by a type of bacteria called Mycobacterium leprae. It affects the skin, peripheral nerves, mucosa of the upper respiratory tract, and the eyes. It can be transmitted through the droplets from the nose and mouth due to close contact with untreated cases. Leprosy is curable with multi-drug therapy or MDT. Leprosy can be classified into two types for treatment purposes. The first type is paucibacillary type, in which cases have fewer bacteria visible and show no signs of advanced disease in biopsies. The second type is multibacillary, in which patients have visible bacteria and may show signs of more advanced disease in biopsies. Let us know about the new treatment regimen that has been announced. The ministry has decided to introduce a 3-drug regimen for paucibacillary cases of leprosy in place of a 2-drug regimen for 6 months. Multi-drug therapy or MDT, as recommended by WHO, consists of 3 drugs: dapsone, rifampicin, and clofazimine. Other steps taken recently include the National Strategic Plan and Roadmap for Leprosy, which aims to achieve zero transmissions of leprosy by 2027. Next, National Leprosy Eradication Program, a centrally sponsored scheme under the National Health Mission. NICOSH 2.0 portal, an integrated portal for leprosy case management, is also a step in the direction. Coming to the status of leprosy in India. India has achieved elimination of leprosy as a public health problem as per WHO criteria of less than 1 case per 10,000 population at national level in 2005. The prevalence rate at national level has decreased to 0.45 per 10,000 population in 2021-22 as compared to 0.69 per 10,000 population in 2014 and 15. The personality in the news for today is Homi Jehangir Bhabha. He was remembered on his death anniversary. Let's briefly go through his contributions. He is regarded as the father of India's nuclear program. He devised India's 3-stage nuclear power program in 1954. He also established 2 great research institutions, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research or TIFR and Atomic Energy Establishment at Trombay. He is known for Bhabha scattering and published a string of widely accepted papers on his theories regarding cosmic ray showers. He is the first person to become the chairman of Atomic Energy Commission of India. He exhibited the values of leadership and intellectual curiosity.
As we conclude today's main news, let's take a look at some quick updates. Since 2008, January 24 has been celebrated as National Girl Child Day for promoting equal opportunities for girl child while raising awareness of the injustices that girls face. On January 24, 1966, Srimati Indira Gandhi took her oath as the first woman Prime Minister of India. Now it also commemorates the anniversary of Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme, which was launched on January 22, 2015. Delhi High Court upheld the validity of Section 5 of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, which prohibits sapinda marriages unless sanctioned by usage or custom. Two individuals are considered sapindas if one is a direct ancestor of the other within the specified sapinda limits, or if they have a common lineal ascendant who is within the limits of sapinda relationship. Centre allowed direct listing of public Indian companies on international exchanges of GIFT International Financial Services Centre. This was enabled by Companies Listing of Equity Shares in Permissible Jurisdictions Rules 2024 and Amendment to Foreign Exchange Management Non-Debt Instruments Rules 2019. The Ministry of Heavy Industries invited bids to set up a domestic manufacturing facility for ACC under production-linked incentive schemes for ACC battery storage. ACCs are the new generation energy storage technologies. They can store electric energy either as electrochemical or chemical energy and convert it back to electric energy when required. Recently, a Namibian cheetah translocated to Kuno National Park under Project Cheetah gave birth to 4 cubs. Kuno National Park is located in Madhya Pradesh and is a part of central Indian Vindhyan Hills. It has dry deciduous forest land. Kuno River is the main source of water. Centre for Science and Environment in association with Tanzania is working to restore Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is the largest freshwater lake in Africa and world's second largest. First is Lake Superior in North America. It is the chief reservoir of River Nile and its basin is shared by Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda and Burundi. Approximately 80% of its water comes from rainfall. Indian Army has launched Operation Sarva Shakti to counter Pakistan's attempts to increase terrorist activities in Jammu and Kashmir. Through this, Indian Army aims to target terrorists who operate on both sides of Pir Panjal mountain ranges. Earlier in 2003, Indian forces launched Operation Sarpa Vinash to flush out terrorists who had infiltrated from across the border. Indian Air Force conducted exercise Desert Night along with French Air and Space Force and UAE Air Force. Before we go, it's time to put your knowledge to test in today's segment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed this edition of News Today. To get the answers to today's quiz and to download the PDF of News Today, make sure to check out the links in the description below.